Hey guys, so I wanted to speak about a subject today that's pretty near and dear to me, and that's addiction. For those of you who don't know, I'm 30, 30 years sober now. November of this last year, I went to 30 years sober. I spent a lot of my young life learning deeply about addiction because it was so difficult for me to, I got sober young at 22. And so it took me a long time to figure out that one of the ways I learned young, and I only really drank and used, and my main thing is that I drank alcohol and I smoked pot. And both of them I did to extremes. Now that said, I still got, good grades in college. I still was holding down a job. I was what I would have called a functional drunk. That said as well, there was nobody ever who came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, I think you got a problem." I just realized pretty quickly that relationships and life and the things that I wanted it to be were not happening. And I knew deep down inside of me that I was out of balance with the use of those things. And it was a part of my family history. And, we have a long list of addicts and alcoholics in my past. And I knew I had to do something about it. So I got sober, and what that looked like for me is I spent 7 years going to meetings every single night for 7 years. And what happened is that when I was young, I think I really struggled so much to feel good about myself. I mean, there was a big belief structure inside of me. If you only really knew me, you wouldn't love me, and I wasn't worthy of love. And I was kind of a bag of poo that I was hiding around this facade that I could create around myself so that I thought I could tell you how great I was rather than because I knew if you really found out, you would think I wasn't great. And so so I lacked a lot of self-confidence, especially with in social situations. They were always very uncomfortable for me. The dating and bar scene was very uncomfortable for me, and I felt like I did it really poorly, and I lacked courage to even approach a gal and talk to her, those sorts of things. But then when alcohol and drugs came into the equation, I had this fake way to feel comfortable and for other people to feel comfortable. The problem is that both me and they lost their boundaries, and we were, I was promiscuous, and I was doing things that weren't positive for who I was as a human being and the way I wanted to live. And it really started to wear on me, and I knew I was going in the wrong direction and not being the person I expected myself to be, and being willing to lie and be a human being that was less than optimal. And for sure there was lots of parts of me that were really broken. So when I went to meetings, I found other people, AA meetings and NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and then I also went to Adult Children of Alcoholics, which was really a beautiful transition for me, and I'll explain that. But in AA and NA, I was able to be around other people that had kind of a like-minded goal, to be sober, and we were supporting one another in that process, and we got a chance to talk about the battle in life. Because the way alcoholism or addiction needs to be thought about is that we have a disease called alcoholism, and we actually treat it with alcohol. The problem is trying to treat that disease with alcohol, life becomes so unbearable and so miserable that trying to figure out how to treat it without alcohol, with things like personal growth and meetings and learning other ways to deal with some of those demons is the only other way. And so I went to a lot of meetings because it was my social circle. When you're 22 and you're sober, you kind of stand out like a sore thumb, and everybody else is partying and I wasn't. And so I found a social circle there, I found support there, and I found mentors there. I found men who had been sober a long time and were leading sober lives and could help me with some of the stuff. One of the things that's said about adult children of alcoholics is, and that's generational, by the way. If you have an alcoholic in your family history that's as much as 4 generations back, if none of those people in that chain of network built a difference into their lives, meaning overcame some of the family legacy, then they're unintentionally going to raise their children in a very similar and dysfunctional way. And codependence is almost always the result of that. And I was highly codependent, and I still struggle with being codependent. And so what ended up happening is that I started finding some really great teachings in both Al-Anon and Adult Children of Alcoholics, where the other programs helped me to learn how to quit drinking, but Al-Anon and Adult Children of Alcoholics 12-step meeting kind of taught me how to live life without drinking and live a quality life, and started addressing some of the higher tier stuff. And so I guess my message is 30 years fast forward. One of the beautiful things is I've been able to successfully raise two pretty darn successful boys who are good boys, and I think they have a good chance at life, a better chance than I had for sure, in terms of the family legacy that they're going to have to wage. But I didn't get it all done in one generation. But they're a way head start over where I was when I was their age. And so I'm proud of how I raised them. There's parts of it that I'm not so proud of, but I am proud that I didn't sit on my butt and just hope things went right. I was proactive in healing myself, and then as a result being a more healed person that could raise a young person into the world. So I guess my end statement is that if you're watching this and you feel like you're struggling with addiction issues, and remember, addictions have lots of different forms. It can be to sex, gambling, drugs, alcohol, adrenaline. It can. My rule is, if you have a definition of who you are as a human being in terms of like spiritually, how do you define yourself and the things that you hold dear? If the activities that you're doing, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, adrenaline, whatever it is taking away from that authentic center self, then, and you're unable to stop doing that with the knowledge that it's taking away from kind of your mission or your path, then it's likely that you have potentially some addiction issues. And I would encourage you to test that by trying to just separate. And if you're unable to, then the 12-step programs can really be super duper. I learned a lot in there, and I'm really grateful for that. And you should know only 20% alcoholics seek the program, and only 2% die sober. 2%. Living a life as an alcoholic or an addict is a really miserable existence. And when I think about 80% of the people who go down that path never come back out, and even 20% who seek the program die sober, it's difficult to entertain that. So this stuff is hard stuff, and so I think it's worth considering. I kind of wanted to share a bit of my story, and hopefully it's hopeful and can create some potentially alternative thought for you, and maybe it can generate some change or some awareness. So Marc Warnke, the Goat Guy, signing out.